Hello, welcome to our live stream, Trinity Radio. I'm Jonathan Pritchett, and with me is,
Braxton Hunter.
and today we're going to be talking about Richard Dawkins and cannibalism.
Yeah, so give us a thumbs up if you can hear us and if it sounds okay and see us and everything else, so we know, or give us a thumbs up. Give us a thumbs up anyway, but just type something if you can. Want to make sure that we're good. So this is only our second live stream ever, so give us some grace as we're still trying to figure everything out. But sounds good. Okay, good. Thank you guys for being here and excited about this. So it's a weird topic,
Yes.
I'll admit, but I decided that perhaps what we would do is, since a lot of what we do on this channel is respond to atheist or non-Christian videos that are on YouTube, I thought, perhaps maybe even one night a week, and we haven't settled on this or anything, but I'm not even sure I've talked to you about this, but maybe one night a
I'm
week
the
or
last to know everything.
one day of the week or something, we would do a kind of uh, a live stream where we would focus on stuff that's not necessarily on YouTube. Maybe sometimes, but perhaps there's something in the blog world, because there's a whole atheist blog world out there that people like John Loftus and like that atheist professor guy that we responded to a few weeks back has a blog. He's one of the top atheist bloggers. And so some of that stuff could get covered in a setting like this, where
you know the level of their content.
Yeah. So when we're not streaming that way. So, all right. So I started looking in that realm, and I found that Richard Dawkins just a couple of days ago released a very interesting tweet. And I'm going to read to you from the Relevant Magazine article, which is titled, "So Now Richard Dawkins is Pondering the Ethics of Cannibalism and Human Steak." Richard Dawkins is back with another extremely unsettling take, this one involving human steak. The evolutionary biologist and author of books, including The God Delusion, is a controversial figure, yada, yada, yada. But down here it says, Dawkins retweeted a Forbes article about how lab-created cultured meat could soon become more commonplace and could offer some promising environmental benefits. Well, yay, we can all be happy about that. For some reason, he then started to openly pontificate about a question no one was asking.
That's a great way to put it.
I love that line. It's the best line in the whole thing. Would he personally eat human steak? Would Dawkins eat personal steak? Personal steak. That is what it is. So he says human steak could, of course, be cultured. Would you eat it? I wouldn't, but it's hard to say why. It's not hard for me to say why.
No, it's not.
It's pretty easy to say why.
Yeah.
It would be cultured from a single nameable person. And then he references Hugh Fernley Whittingstall, who served human placenta. Now, he said, I wouldn't eat that either.
Also clone one person, in this case, a baby. Yeah, I wouldn't eat that either. Yeah, a Dawkins burger.
Yeah, so he's got, on the tweet, he has a picture of
hamburger.
Of a hamburger that's supposedly a human burger. And just before we get into this, and by the way, this is not just kind of a shock jock type episode. We're going to look at the Bible and look at the biblical data on this.
But he said it. I was thinking Richard Dawkins, his Twitter feed is the equivalent of it's a train wreck. It's like John Piper during a national tragedy, right? Just before you post it, really, really think about it, but
yeah.
I mean, like I said, we have ours too, but this is just...
You're speechless. You have no words.
Yeah, I'm not going to ever eat Braxton Hunter. That's just...
Well, now that's where I wanted to go with this. So we are going to talk about the Bible, and we're going to talk about the data there on this, and we are going to talk about maybe some important big picture type stuff that we can springboard off of this into. But I do want to say that in just in talking about this in kind of a casual way leading into it, you are very much you could have lines of burgers from particular celebrities, because for those that don't know, what they would do is they would take some skin cells, and this is what they're already doing with animal product. You could take some skin cells from a person, and then you could take Jonathan Pritchett and Prime Burgers, right? You say USDA, man.
If it makes money, we'll reconsider our position.
So yeah,
this is why you need to become patrons, because otherwise we get off into things like this. Crazy.
Yeah. So say we can imagine a limited number, because this have to be done as scientists. So it'd be like, say it's like Brad Pitt or something. The limited edition Brad Pitt line of burgers only at O'Charlie's or something like that. You can only get it one place. And so they could charge for that. So you would have lines of meat like that, I can imagine. So, and let's what Dawkins says, a single nameable person. Now, this is obviously very bizarre.
Yeah.
The most obvious question is, why would he think of this?
Not the dumbest thing he said, but pretty dumb. I mean, it's like Peter Singer. They always say stupid things, you know. Why would it come to mind? Well, everyone's seen the movie. Well, anyone 40 and up, or maybe 38 and up, has seen the movie Alive. And if you were caught in the snowy mountains and stranded, and people were dying on you, would you eat somebody to stay alive? So it's not like, you know, cannibalism is a thing in the world. People have thought about cannibalism before. So
yeah, and we are going to get into that.
But like, oh, science can make this possible. So how about it? Well, I wouldn't do it, but I don't see a reason why not. Well, of course you did. Richard Dawkins wouldn't see a reason why, because I mean, he thinks it's okay to, you know, slaughter babies in the womb and all kinds of things that you can do to human beings that Christians in the Christian worldview would have moral objections to.
And this is going to trigger a lot of the atheists in the crowd, and I can't help that. But I understand that many atheists think they can have a meaningful form of morality that is subjective, and many atheists think that they can have objective morality. But that hasn't been demonstrated to my satisfaction. And many atheists are happy to say, yeah, there's just no objective morality, has to be subjective. But if you don't have that objective morality, why? It would be hard for Richard Dawkins to say why to anything. Like what is it wrong to kill someone? It's hard to say why.
Right.
At least on an objective, fundamental sense.
Yeah, it's like Singer. What he's marry animals, sure, why not? You know.
I mean, except for the pragmatic type, you know, well, we have to share space and we want to have a happy environment and all that sort of thing. But anyway, that's a whole different discussion. So let's get back to this. So you brought up there something that makes this particularly interesting, because there are a few ways we can think of someone ending up engaging in cannibalism. Yes. Okay. Frankly, one way is someone kills someone and eats them. I think there's like no way this is going to be monetized. And by the way, we did turn on super chats. Just saying, not asking, just saying, just a purveyor of knowledge here. And so that's one thing. You could kill someone and eat them. No one should do that. YouTube, we're not advocating for that. The second thing is, you could be in a situation where survival is on the line, like Aquinas Clive says, the Andes Mountains plain. Yeah. Okay, all right. So we're on a lifeboat. Pritchett dies. Yeah. Or actually, given his current, well, no, I'd live because I've got more fat deposits. More fat to feed on, yeah. But so Pritchett dies, and then I think, okay, now I could live a couple more days and maybe a boat would come by, yeah, like in Castaway or something, or maybe I get to a deserted island, and the way to do that would be I'd have to cannibalize Pritchett. Yeah. Or I respect his whatever issues we're going to talk about in a minute, why you might not do this, yeah, and give him to the fish, and then they're going to do it. Yeah. Right. So that is, to my mind, obviously, those are the extremes. Those are two completely different extremes. What this new thing introduces is nobody got to die, man. We've created, like, I could have a Pritchett burger while I'm talking to Pritchett, and he's no worse off for it. In fact, he's probably made some money.
The process that fast? I don't know anything about the science.
They could take I don't know if it took 6 months. I mean, you're still alive.
We hope.
So yeah. So this creates some interesting. So the first thing that I want us to do is I want us to take a look at the biblical data on this. Now, if you're a skeptic in the crowd, you might say, yeah, but why would I care what the biblical data has to say? Here's why. Because there's not just atheists in the crowd. Right. We are not just an apologetic show. And so I think it's important for us to consider what the Bible does have to say. And in fact, if you do want an apologetics angle for this, we all here in this live stream space have an internal reaction to what Richard Dawkins is presenting us with.
Oh, we have a question in the thing. No, it would be Frank's Red Hot. That's the only kind of hot sauce you could ever eat with a Pritchett burger.
Okay, well, you should get to decide. It's your burger.
No, I'm just.
My wife prefers sriracha, which is disgusting to me.
Objective truth here.
So, okay, so what am I talking about?
The biblical data. And we're not just a show for atheists, and of course.
Yeah, if you wanted an apologetics angle on this, what you could say is, you could say, all right, look, We're going to look at what the Bible tends to give us about cannibalism. And then we're going to look at what Richard Dawkins gives us about cannibalism. Not that he's supporting it. And then what we could say is, okay, which one does the Bible seem consistent with our intuitions, our moral intuitions about this? Because one thing that I want to say, and I'll go ahead and say it right now, and I hope Pritchett would agree with me on this, is that there are things that the Bible is not as clear about as we would like. And in those places, for the believer, we've got, number one, the reformer of the Holy Spirit in our lives to guide us. But also we have this moral intuition that we have. And I think that for many of us, I think there may be something to this moral intuition that kind of cries out, wait, what did Dawkins just say? What? That just seems wrong. Maybe because it's wrong. And so I think we shouldn't dismiss that piece of data
Well, Dawkins
too quickly.
himself says, I wouldn't do this, of course, so why make that? I mean, you bring it up just to say, I don't want any part of this, but I mean, I can't see why not, but not me, why not you?
Yeah. Yeah. What is it that's telling you no?
Yeah.
Is it the same thing is it no different than the thing that tells me I may not want to eat cottage cheese? Because it's got to be something more than that, right? Shannon Q says she also loves sriracha. You and my wife would get along on that point, at least. All right, let's. By the way, hello, Shannon Q. Glad you're here. Hello, Ian Buchanan. Hello, everyone else. Now that I started, I'm going to upset someone if I don't. All right, we're new to this, guys. Live streaming is new to us. All right, biblical data. So the first thing that should be mentioned, we're going to come back to Genesis 1 in a few minutes to talk about male and female. He created them and all that whole thing. But in Genesis chapter 9, however you take the book of Genesis, chapters 1 through 11, however you take that, this would be interesting data to consider. In Genesis chapter 9, verse 6, it says, whoever sheds the blood of man, verse 3, I'm sorry, I want to start with verse 3. It says, every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. And as I gave you the green plants, I give you everything. Now, as I'm looking at Pritchett, he's a part of everything, and he's living flesh. My dog, Indiana, is living flesh.
Delicacy.
Chickens are living flesh. I mean, we've got all these
8 running around my backyard.
Pritchett's got chickens, in case nobody knew that.
Eggs
in a subdivision, too.
Yeah. 2. Well, I shouldn't say that I have 2 over the limit in our area, but
chickens are jerks.
Yeah.
So
but they also give us eggs. So.
Yeah, they do that.
And they're so stupid and funny to watch.
Yeah.
I'd eat a chicken.
Oh, yeah.
I'd eat one of my chickens that my kids have named.
Maybe we'll go to Chick-fil-A after we get done here. Who knows? All right. So it does say that. Now, does that mean that you can just, I mean, hey, a man or a woman or a kid is a everything?
Yeah.
Is that food for you? Well, verse 6 tells us of the same chapter, whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed, for God made man in his own image.
Right.
Now, there's 2 interesting things in that verse, Pritchett, that I see. One is, okay, but like we said, that has to do with that aspect of cannibalism, or that path toward cannibalism, where you kill someone and then you cannibalize.
Right.
But we're talking about a way where that wouldn't necessarily be the case.
Yeah.
But there's a reason given. It's not just that you killed a man.
Right.
It's God made man in his own image.
Right. And so the principle here is that image bearers are of such high value, right, that to take it has to cost something of such high value, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So and that's kind of, see, it's not sometimes people who even like our Catholic friends who oppose capital punishment, people who oppose capital punishment say, well, there's already been one murder. If human life is so valuable, why do you want to take the life of the criminal instead of life in prison or whatever else? Well, actually, imprisoning somebody forever, actually locking people up in cages for perpetuity, actually dehumanizes them. But that misses the point entirely. It's because of the high value of human life. Mm-hmm. Because for the Christian worldview, human life and as image bearers, those who bear the image of our Creator, it's not merely a functional worth. It is an ontological worth. It's intrinsic to your ontology, to your nature as image bearer, as to why human beings have value. It's intrinsic. It's not about what you can function, you can perform in society or whatever. That's foreign to the Christian worldview. It's because of what you are that makes you valuable in and of itself. So the idea to desecrate it, so to speak, in this kind of manner, would Christians would naturally find such things offensive. Now, if you think that there is no difference between a human being and a cat, right? Because what's one animal among other animals, right? Uh, you could probably justify uh, eating other people, or you could justify even taking my cells and making something out of me that would resemble a prime's rib, as was said earlier.
Yeah.
But I would object to that because that is treating human beings as less than what they are. That is being, irreverent towards human beings. It is being callous. It is being, just treating with contempt almost, in my opinion.
So Shannon Q says, what is immoral about eating cultured lab-grown, I'm assuming she means human meat? It was never a conscious person. I mean, it's gross, but can you articulate why it's wrong? So
I am articulating
so
why it's
that's
wrong.
partly what
because you don't treat things that should be treated with dignity so flippantly. And
well, I think there are a few elements here. I would make a case, and first of all, it's possible not all Christians agree about this.
right.
I think most of them would, maybe without knowing why. But it's possible you'll find Christians that don't agree. This is not like part and parcel with the gospel or anything. But I would put forward 2 or 3 things, and we're unpacking them as we go. One of those that is available to all of us is what we kind of referenced a moment ago. Why is it that we have this strong inclination? That is wrong. That is no. That is, even more than perhaps some things that are obviously wrong.
Yeah.
And so I think that's part of it. I don't think I realize that an atheist naturalist might view this differently than we would, even granting their own meaningful morality. But the fact is, we would say that morality, it didn't just happen. It's there from God.
Yeah.
And so as a result, you should pay attention to it.
Yeah.
And then now someone could respond to that. Yeah, but there have been cultures that within their moral framework, they did cannibalize. And we're going to get to that in just a few moments. But so that's one thing. Secondly, I do think that scripture gives us a picture of it that is, you shouldn't be doing this.
Right.
Okay. And then thanks,
Ooh,
JMD
thank
Apologetics. That is our first super chat ever in history.
Yeah.
You're the first, JMD Apologetics. When is Jonathan going to come on his channel? Whenever he's asked.
No, I'm always asked. My schedule is so crazy that you know how I can end up on this channel is because Braxton orders me to, because I work for him and he signs he doesn't sign the paychecks, but he allows me to have them. But yeah, it's just my schedule fluctuates.
We'll get him on your channel.
Yeah.
We'll get him on your channel. Okay, so that's one thing, is this moral thing that we think is going on there. Secondly, I don't think the Bible gives us a picture of this that indicates it's something that we should in any wise be engaging in. And then thirdly, on the back of other biblical passages, and we're going to look at this stuff, like this one that talks about being made in the image of God. You were articulating this a moment ago, Jonathan. I think there is something to how we treat and how we desecrate and how we value human life.
Right. It is our human beings,
even in death, and even
are human beings intrinsically valuable, or are they disposable?
Mm-hmm.
And can you treat them with the kind of flippant disregard as you would, chickens?
Yeah. So
either you can or you can't. Now, there are worldviews that can't give an Richard Dawkins, and I'm picking on Richard Dawkins. Atheists pick on Richard Dawkins because he's outside of his field of zoology. He's a buffoon. No secret there. But even he can't. It's hard to say why, right? Because your worldview can't even give you the why. Our worldview, whether you agree with our worldview or not, it does give us a why.
But I'm going to give him a pass here, because I think what's probably happening is
I am giving him a pass. His worldview is so incoherent.
No. Because Richard, because
it doesn't have one.
Even though we disagree about the ontological foundation for morality and objective versus subjective between atheists and Christians, most of your atheists are still going. I mean, they're all going to cling to some form of morality. We don't have too many nihilists out there that are just open like that.
Right.
But so he's largely accepting Western values. And so even though he's an atheist and we don't suspect that he has a good grounding for that, he's still trying to operate on stuff that we would.
Well, he's
mostly
also
consider.
said what Christianity recently said it's not the worst thing in the world, or it's a good idea, or he
Yeah, I
doesn't
don't-
want
I
to
didn't
see
hear
he
that.
doesn't want to see it go away or something. I
Well,
read
that's nice
something
to
where it
hear.
said- yeah. Well, obviously because he has to borrow from our worldview in order to. Wow.
Matt Jackson.
Yeah.
Matt
For
Jackson.
Starbucks. The only thing I've ever had at Starbucks that I like is that dragon. What was it that you?
It was some girly drink.
Yeah, it was a.
Oh,
girly
I'm
drink.
sorry. That was.
No.
Is that okay to say?
Yeah, it was a girly drink. It was pink. It was dragon something, and it was freaking good. I'm with Eric Hernandez on this. Girly drinks are awesome, so I have no problem with that.
Okay, so first of all, Matt Jackson. We're going to come back to this. Matt Jackson. I haven't gotten back to you, but he just said to me the other day. He was asking me about, do I do all the design work for our show? And I was like, yeah.
You
He's
got
like,
to do anything.
It's like, if I pay you, can you help me out with that? so now I got to help you out with that. Glad you're here. And then Kevlar Henderson.
Yes, Trinity student. YouTuber.
Both Trinity.
Yeah, they're both Trinity students.
$15. Wow, thank you so much. Spartan theology.
Yeah,
this is fantastic. This stuff works, huh?
Yeah.
I don't expect this every time, but this is nice for the maiden voyage.
I'll get on there. Yeah. I say I have also right now. I have issues in my office that I have to use Braxton's office if you notice when I was on capturing Christianity, I was in here because I for some reason I'm having issues in my office right now. So that's another scheduling thing. I have to work around his thing.
So the amount is in pesos. I saw 5,000. What? The amount is in pesos, so don't get too excited. Good morning from the Philippines. Do you think we focus too much on Dawkins these days? He seems to posit philosophical emptiness, so it's silly to give him so much attention, or is it necessary because of his influence? God bless.
Can I answer that one?
First, let me say this.
Okay.
I went to the Philippines in 2007. Love the Philippines. And went to Pozo Rubio, went to what's the name of the big mountain that's kind of like the tourist destination? Went there, loved it. So glad you guys are here. Glad you're here. Go ahead.
One mountain, and he should know
they have more than one mountain
where tourists go. Yeah. Okay. Do we focus on? I don't think we actually do focus on Richard Dawkins much these days, but when we do focus on him, it's always this kind of Twitter dribble. Because that's what he's reduced to now. I mean, not a lot of people took the God delusion seriously. His whole Four Horsemen things kind of passed. So, but if you mean by the Dawkins types of people, atheism in general, probably so. Wow. Nice.
You're telling me 5,000 pesos is $100? What is happening? What man, I just really appreciate you all. Can we just stop for a second, quit the thing for a minute, and just tell y'all we did not expect this. The only reason we ever monetized anything is because our subscribers asked us to.
Yeah.
And I am blown away by this.
Yeah,
I am utterly blown away by this. I can't believe
the
it.
kindness of people.
Thank you so smile for him, Pritchett. You made Pritchett smile.
Yes.
Not an easy feat. Y'all are so sweet. Thank you. I love our audience. Our audience is awesome.
But anyway, back to Dawkins. Dawkins, the problem is like the academy, even atheistic philosophers in academia are kind of flippantly dismissive of him. But the types of atheists that you would find running around on YouTube, trolling comments on apologists, and some of them, not all of them, but some of Shannon Q's comrades on the atheist YouTube side, not all of them, some of them peddle this kind of Dawkins-esque nonsensical atheism. That,
you're hitting on a point I wanted to make, which is even if these guys like Hitchens, is not with us anymore, but people like Hitchens, people like Dawkins, they are very much source material for a lot of atheists today. Now that's not to say, I mean, William Lane Craig is source material for a lot of people in the apologetics world, but I'm just saying they're still relevant via internet atheism, I think, in a big way. So I think it's relevant. Let's get to some scripture now. So here's the thing: the Bible doesn't really outright, explicitly say what we want it to say right here.
Oh, this is better. Their comments are better than our show, man.
Well, they're not better than the Bible, though.
Okay.
And so, but what the Bible does,
Sanctimony
just like with polygamy, the Bible gives us a picture of when this shows up in the Bible,
Cannibalism.
it's not a good thing.
No,
it's never
not.
a good thing.
Yeah.
Okay. One of those cases is Leviticus 20. I'll just read through a couple of these passages. Leviticus 26:29, you shall eat the flesh of your sons, and you shall eat the flesh of your daughters. Deuteronomy 28:53 through 57, and you shall eat the fruit of your womb, the flesh of your sons and daughters, whom the Lord your God has given you in the siege and in the distress. By the way, this is not saying this is what you should do, and it's also not saying the Lord your God has given you the fruit of your womb to eat. That's not what's being said.
Right.
These are condemnation passages. It's because what you've done, the idolatry that you've gotten into, I'm going to retract and let it happen now. I'm going to let this thing go down.
This is what you're going to be doing. And this is what's going to befall you. Right?
So it's like a judgment type thing.
Right.
Jeremiah 19:9, and I will make them eat the flesh of their sons and their daughters. By the way, again, if you get a comprehensive look at what it means throughout the scripture, when God makes something happen, sometimes the way he makes something happen is by backing off and letting happen what was going to happen. Lamentations 2:20, look, O Lord, and see with whom have you...
Well, that's explained if you... the enemies, it means by means of the enemies and stuff, and me not continuing to provide protection, right? Because God typically protects Israel in the Bible until they're under judgment, and then he withdraws that, and then whether it's captivity, the Syrians and whatever, or just whoever their enemies are that come. I mean, even as early as the wilderness, right? They're like, they'll make God angry and say, God will get upset and say, well, you're not going to be able to do that. And they're like, no, we're going to go down there and siege that city anyway. And then they all get white. All the Israelites, they get their teeth kicked in because they try to do it without God. Yeah. That's what happens,
Ezekiel 5:10, therefore fathers shall eat their sons in your midst, and sons shall eat their fathers. Now, these things have fulfillment. For example, this happened during the time of King Jehoram. 2 Kings 6:28 through 29. And the king asked her, what is your trouble? She answered, the woman said to me, give your son that we may eat him today, and we will eat my son tomorrow. This is the R-rated part of the Bible, you're reading something. Did you guys do a response at all to the second ear biscuits? Okay. Yeah, this is a good time to mention this. So me, Mike Lycona, and Cameron Bertuzzi were yesterday responding to both Rhett and Link on ear biscuits. And something happened like across multiple channels on YouTube that live streams just stopped. This is where somebody in a country church would be like, the devil's in the sound system,
right?
But
and in a Pentecostal church, they start trying to cast demons out of YouTube.
So we're gonna do that again on Monday. The plan is Monday, so stick with us. All right, so this is when it's pictured in Scripture. It's a bad thing. It's not a good thing. But let's go back now to Genesis 9:6, where it says, whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed, for God made man in his own image. Genesis chapter 1 tells us that he made man in his image. And so what does that mean exactly? What does it mean to be made in the image of God? Pritchard, would you like to talk about what it means to be made in the image of God?
Oh, yeah, I do want to respond to something else about something Elijah said in the comments, though, before we get to that. I do wonder if a lot of the atheists you meet online are really persuaded by the Dawkins kind of stuff as a reason to disbelieve. I do think that some of them are. I'm not saying that's all atheists, but look, whether it's atheism or apologetics, there's always a low-hanging fruit. So Kent Hovind, right, says a lot of things that I think are crazy. And
now, Pritchett,
there are Christians that are persuaded by some of that stuff. In kind, there are atheists who are persuaded by the low-hanging fruit of atheism. It just happens. Anyway, as far as being made in the image of God, I like the way that you put it, actually. So I'm just going to paraphrase you and say, you think about...
Wait, before you do that.
Okay.
Thank you, Not My Real Name. Not My Real Name has been an occasional conversation partner of mine on the channel. Wow. And I correct me if I'm wrong. I could be wrong, but I don't think he or she is necessarily in our camp. And so, so that means a lot. Thank you. And Daniel Apologetics, who sometimes puts our videos in his playlist. Yeah. And thank you so much for that. Thank
Yeah.
you so much
Response to
to
atheist
Atheist
free thinker saying he's not subscribing to predestination, predetermined. Well, those aren't equivalent terms. Um, so I don't.
Daniel Apologetics, you are, I think, one of our patrons. And on the patron page, we have a link to the private Facebook group for Trinitarians. So check that out. If you don't have it, I'll send it to you. I'll send you something. Hit me up on Facebook.
There's a lot of angles to being made in the image of God. There's a functional angle as being God's representatives here on earth to do the kind of subordinate yet to God, but yet kind of dominion and rulership over the stewardship, you know, of the planet. You think about what human beings are, what God is. You think about the communicable attributes of God. You think about the incommunicable attributes of God.
What that means is
the incommunicable attributes are things that cannot be shared between a deity like Yahweh and people, but the communicable attributes are things that is about God's nature, being personal, relational, have free will, those kind of things. You think about how are we imaging God, and it would be all the ways, to a lesser degree, right? Minus the omni attributes or whatever, of course, but to an extent, we can be relational, we could be cognitive, we could be, have free will, volitional creatures, things like that. So that all of that kind of wraps up in what in Christian thought would be, and I mean broadly based Christian thought, not in,
I think a way to get there pretty quick is
yeah.
to say, okay, we know what the animals are like,
Yeah.
and we know what the Bible tells us God is like. What are ways that we are like God and not like the
There
animals?
you go.
And those things will
even
get you,
faster.
I think,
Yeah.
to the image of God.
But
So
you don't
creativity,
get to
free
use words
will,
like,
spiritual, the ability to
yeah.
intelligence. Now, animals have intelligence of varying degrees, but according to Romans chapter 12, verse 2, we have a intelligence that we can have a mind that can be renewed.
Yeah.
So these you
And
say,
Romans chapter 1,
but that's all Christian-y
originally.
stuff. Yeah, we're
Yeah.
Christians. That's going to happen.
Right.
So we have here 6640 says, I feel like Joe Rogan is a bigger influence than Dawkins. I like him, but he is so arrogant on religion and Christianity. It is painful to hear him discuss. Yeah, I have there is a video that I did response to him and Michael Shermer.
Yeah.
And what I put at the very beginning of it was she's like, the New Testament? The New Testament? You mean like the one that like Constantine wrote? You know, it's like, yeah, but I like Joe Rogan too, as a person,
Yeah.
as a human being.
I when Richard Dawkins stays in his lane, like zoology, the blind watchmaker, all that kind of thing. Good stuff. I mean, it's not like he can't write a decent book until he writes The God Delusion. When he gets out of his lane, it's it would imagine me writing a science textbook.
Oh, that'd be so awesome.
It would be awesome if you were high, perhaps, but
that might be what it's kind of
what
like.
is this gibberish?
I've never been high, but
spewing. Yeah. And oh yeah, that's right.
I've never been high.
Okay, but that's not my lane. So that's what Richard Dawkins is doing, and it's a train wreck. So I like that phrase. I learned it from my kids.
Hey,
stay in your lane.
Chase Clements, we got that person's name right last time. Says, hi, atheist here. With well-being as my moral foundation, this idea of synthetic cannibalism seems amoral. Without a direct or at least indirect restriction in Scripture, is your position that this is immoral? Yeah. So to lay it out again, here's my case. And again, not all Christians may agree on this, and the ones that do may not know why. But I think number one, there is I think what amounts to a moral repulsion to this. Yeah. And I think as a Christian, our morality didn't just spring up through, for whatever reason, through social development or evolution or whatever. I think however it got here, it's passed down from God. And so I think we should pay attention to those moral revulsions like that. And then, so I think that's one good reason. I think we all share that one, or at least most of us do. I think secondly, the Bible you're right that the Bible doesn't give us an explicit, don't do that.
You don't need the Bible why doesn't the Bible say this statement? Why doesn't the Bible say determinism is true?
The Bible don't say smoke cigarettes, so I can smoke cigarettes. Right. Well, you can smoke cigarettes, but
but I mean, you don't need explicit statement. Well, and we already acknowledged that at the beginning. We don't need an explicit statement.
Right.
We're
So that's another thing. And then the third thing is, I think it does impact how we view human flesh, human physical life.
Yeah.
And I think that is something that is sacred. It has an ascribed sacred, sacred maybe. I think it's set apart by God.
Yeah.
For this purpose. We have an ascribed value that God gives us, and we're made in His image. Now, if you're an atheist, I mean, you might not buy all that stuff, but I'm telling you why we buy it. But I think a couple of those reasons don't have anything to, like, even if you're not a Christian, I think perhaps you could say, if I think my morality, my moral inclinations and intuitions are in any sense a reliable guide, then even if I don't necessarily know why I have this reaction to this particular phenomenon, I'm going to follow that. I think that's fair. But
I see. So, I mean, if you're saying, if the process is painless, I could see, why not? I mean, is it just kind of falls outside of the realm of morality? But for those of us who aren't frivolous with human beings and don't think that human beings are frivolous, trivial clumps of atoms, then we're going to find this immoral. So
now I haven't heard the response I thought I would hear from someone in the skeptics crowd, which is, wait a minute, your whole religion revolves around eating the flesh and drinking the blood of the Savior. I've heard a lot of that online since in other discussions about this issue about cannibalism.
Maybe their thinking is a little bit better because maybe they've made an effort to not.
Well, these folks, our crowd, you're saying, are
I'm talking about our atheist crowd.
They're saying we're not going to stick you with that.
Because but I don't even think you can stick Catholics with that, with even transubstantiation, and I don't think you could even stick Lutherans with that with transubstantiation either. But
good point. So now here we come to something. I've had a couple people ask about this in the comments here, chat. That, like, this person says, would it be wrong to drink cultured human saliva?
When I kiss my wife, I get plenty of it.
All right. The sex episode was last week. Okay, man. Right. Get the romantic stuff out of here.
Sloppy wet kisses.
So,
love you, Misty.
I think you made a relevant point yesterday when we were discussing this, and this kind of brings us. No, I don't want to go there yet.
The backwash of your.
I don't want to go yet.
When your kids steal your soda, because anyone who knows me knows that I drink Diet Citrus Drop from the 2-liter, and I'm sure that my kids have picked up that bad habit, and so that they'll drink mine, and then I'm drinking their backwash.
This is disgusting.
But I don't think that that's equivalent to eating a meat burger.
Dustin Paulson, unforeseen kisses. That's the heaven meets earth like a sloppy wet kiss, like an unforeseen kiss. That's Praise Group insider humor. All right. Before we get to when might it be okay, really tough questions about it, like in survival situations. You might want to know that Medical News Today has some information on the health implications of eating colleagues like Jonathan Pritchett. Although it seems wrong, they say, the good news is consuming cooked human flesh is no more dangerous than eating the cooked flesh of other animals. The same goes for the majority of the human body. The health implications are similar to that of eating any large omnivore. However, there is one organ that should be avoided at all cost, the brain. Now listen to this. By the way, have you ever eaten animal brain?
Chilled monkey brain.
Chilled monkey brain.
I just think of
Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom. Have you ever eaten animal brain?
No, but I mean, if you've ever been crawfish boil,
I've eaten animal brain.
Yeah, I mean,
I've eaten pig brain, pork brain. It was rough. All right, the 4A people of
this is nasty. I usually say no to that kind of thing.
Papua New Guinea, until relatively recently, practiced transumption, eating deceased relatives. It is this isolated group that demonstrated the very serious ramifications of eating other humans' brain. Kuru is a unanimously fatal transmissible spongiform encephalopathy. It is a prion-based disease. It's the prions you got to watch out for. Similar to BSE, bovine spongiform encephalopathy, also known as a mad cow disease. You remember mad cow disease?
Yeah, and our Scientologist friends would say those engrams and thetans got to watch out for those.
It's got a 5 to 20 year incubation time. So a person could go from You could have. See, I was in the UK eating a big plate of beef at our hotel when they told about mad cow disease on the news.
Yeah.
And I realized this thing can be 20 years before you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, how, and it's only now that I know the past few years that I'm safe.
People have resorted. Yeah, we talked about that
But
at the beginning.
so
Get
so
back to that.
so this Kuru thing. So there are some negative things about eating,
Yeah.
especially the
You ever
brain.
seen the movie Ravenous? Where they all
I
went
think that's the one.
crazy.
Is that the one where the guy is reporting to a reporter? He's writing it down, and everybody in the whole town was
It's like back
disgusted.
it's like back in the
1700s.
yeah, and
they were on a
everyone starts
raft.
going crazy. No, they were all in this little old timey town, and they start taking to eating human flesh, and then everyone starts going insane.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. No, but so that's the medical side of things. But people have been asking, here's what we need to get to. And it's a weird thing to ask, but in case any of you are ever in a survival situation and your phone will not reach us to listen to our then live stream, to chat and ask us, may I engage in this practice to save my own life? We're going to tell you right now what we think about that.
So if you and I were on a raft, right,
Yeah.
and you died,
Yeah.
would I eat you? See,
this is so weird.
The thing is, no, I mean, what was the guy? There was a movie, 127 Days, where the guy cut his own arm off to escape from being stuck in the mountains or whatever. You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
See, I'm looking at me, and I'm looking at you, and our audience can see this. I mean, if it's a choice between eating you or cutting off part of myself and eating myself, I think I would go with me over you for as long as I could.
You'd eat your own arm or something?
I mean, it just seems like less violation of you to do that. Plus, I'm just better quality stock.
Oh my gosh.
But,
well,
but no, I mean,
the good news is your body's going to do that naturally.
Yeah. I mean, see, I don't know in these survival situations. I just don't think that.
No, you're missing that. You brought up something yesterday that was brilliant and you're just not thinking of it now. The point is, all right, we're talking about the sacredness of human life.
Right.
We're talking about the value of human life. In such a situation, I'm not going to say have at it, and I don't think that would be your tone or approach to it either. Anyone, very few people. But I do think that the difference there would be you're trying to preserve human life in that situation. It is his life for your life. He's died.
Yeah. At what point does the preservation of something of value take precedent? See, that's a sort of graded absolution idea. So, at what point is you're gone already? Is the intrinsic?
And I guess what? If this ever happens, I don't know about between you and God or anything, but like, I'm cool with it. If I'm dead,
go ahead, and if we're on a raft, I can.
You go for it.
See, but I'm also smart enough to think that, man, I could use Braxton as bait to catch fish that would taste better.
And you can do that too,
right? So I mean, I don't know.
You see what a good friend I am,
right? I won't care.
I haven't even filled out the thing on the back of my driver's license about organ donation, but I'm telling you, have at it.
Wow.
If I'm dead,
talk about and this hypothetical, but I'm not going to donate organs.
I think I should still get. I think I should still get the points.
No,
the friend
fill
points.
out the back of your card, my friend.
All right,
you're getting glorified organs. You won't need them.
So now we've kind of come down to the end of that aspect. Someone asked, are we going to take Q&A about other topics besides this? And I don't know why not.
If you paid money. No,
but no, we don't have to. No, but
yeah, he doesn't. I'm.
Someone asked, what's the difference between moral epistemology and moral ontology? Moral epistemology has to do with how you come to know that something is right or wrong. Moral ontology has to do with the grounding of morality.
And in and of itself, independent of how you discovered it.
All right. So, in review, Richard Dawkins said something crazy, but we've taken it seriously. And the Bible seems to give us an overwhelming picture of this is not good.
Right.
We have, all of us, I think, have a moral repulsion to it that I think should be taken seriously.
Including Dawkins. He's like, I wouldn't do it. Why not? But he can't think of why, but he just knows that he doesn't want to do it.
And third, it further degrades the view of human beings and human physical bodies in our society, where that is already such a problem with abortion and everything else. All right. So so that kind of wraps that up. Now, questions on anything else? Let's see. Let's take a
It
look.
just goes to let this be a lesson for all of us. Don't answer questions nobody's asking anyway. I mean, nobody. And then Richard Dawkins, maybe eating people. I don't know. I wouldn't, but maybe. Right? I mean, that's how this literally happened. So before you tweet that, think about before you tweet it. Just ask, should I really tweet this? Who wants to know this? And when you can't think of anybody else but you, these are things that you should ponder late at night by yourself. You know.
Someone said, "Does pedophilia fall under the biblical categorical sin of fornication?" I'm not trying to give a gotcha question, just curious. Maybe it was discussed already. Well, first of all, fornication is kind of be viewed as a catch-all for sexual immorality.
Right.
So in that sense, yes, but in a more basic sense, it's immoral and sinful, and that's the primary point. Someone brought up the Donner Party. You can go look at the
You want
history
to
of the
have
Donner
sex?
Party
Be married to someone of legal age in the country that you live in
with their consent.
with their consent and have at it. Because and become a Christian if you're not, because we do it better. Watch last week's episode.
Isaiah Braxton says, "What's up, Braxton and Jonathan? You've got a really cool name, Isaiah Braxton."
That is a cool name.
And
Surpasses
always says positive,
Yeah.
friendly things. Not that I require that, but it does help.
What's up with me is it's Friday. I've got a weekend. It's going to be a very uneventful weekend, which are my favorite. So that's what I'm excited about it. The Earth is flat. Laser tests and long distance infrared show flat level land. God was right, man was wrong. Yeah.
Okay. Dawkins has also said it's not even important.
No. Okay, listen. I can look. God bless you, man. I take the same position with flat earthers that I take with old Earth creationists and young Earth creationists. I'm not a concordance. If science proves the Earth is flat and there's a big giant conspiracy, great. It has nothing to do with what the Bible was teaching. May have to do with something about ancient cosmology and the way that the phenomenological language was used to describe it. If science proves that the Earth is young, has nothing to do with what the Bible says. Bible's not interested in that question. If science consistently shows that it's as old as they say it is, great. Has nothing to do with what the Bible is teaching. The Bible doesn't teach an old Earth. It doesn't teach a flat Earth. It doesn't teach a spherical Earth. It's not interested in modern science, ancient cosmology, and describing things in phenomenological language. Has absolutely nothing to do with a lot of the questions that we're asking about science and natural causes and whatever else.
Jim Amberg says, "I'm late to the party. Can anyone sum up the last 50 minutes in a brief haiku?" And I can. Not a haiku, because I'm not sure how to do that. But I'll give you this. Roses are red, violets are blue. Dawkins is wrong about eating you.
There you go.
Oh, man. Okay, do you guys think the church can do better? The church can do better, a better job reaching out same-sex attracted people. Is it a problem when the church turns an eye to the third to the person on a third marriage, but scorns same-sex attraction? Okay, first of all, I don't, because I have a whole episode on this, but I don't think that the fact that someone experiences an attraction means that they're committing a sin. But the simpler question about this, take someone on their third marriage or someone who is practicing in such a relationship. I think that the church should not draw the line in terms of membership or anything else at the type of particular sinful activity, whatever it is. I think they should draw the line at repentance. Has a person repented of the sin? And I think that kind of answers.
So is the guy and or the lady going to get it right on their third marriage? Is that, have they repented of the? Here's my thinking on this. Okay, I know that there are Christians who struggle with same-sex attraction. I know of Christians who used to struggle and have been delivered.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that working out our mortification of the sin is going to be the same in every single person, right? I don't think that we should treat these other sins as if they are not, as bad. And some of them aren't. So I'm not one of those people who says uh, categorizing sexual sins. Just limit it to that. I'm not one of these people that says all sins should be treated equally, because not all sins are equally evil. They're all equally sinful, but they're not all equally evil. And I don't think that we should kind of wink at heterosexual sins, and then just thunder from the pulpit about the sins pertaining to homosexual behavior. So to me, it's there's a lot of inconsistency there, because I'm not a fan of easy amens. So if you are sitting in a congregation of 70 Southern Baptists, not a single one of them is dealing with same-sex attraction, and you thunder against homosexuality week after week from the pulpit, but you say nothing about the sexual immorality that could be going on among those 70 people, that's no, I'm not into that. So yeah, there is a sense in which you can, not everybody, but you can become unbalanced in the way that you handle uh, issues involving homosexual sexual immorality and heterosexual sexual immorality. So yeah, there's a problem with that. I think we need to become more balanced. If you're going to call it out across the board. That's not to say that they're all the same. Like,
Mm-hmm.
they're different, and they each require different ways of communicating the issues involved in that. But yeah, as far as like the frequency of addressing them, I'm not a fan of people who address sins that are never a problem. I'll use a different example outside of this. It's like a church filled with overweight Baptists, 99% of whom have no medical issues that led to their obesity, and never talking about gluttony, right? Don't preach on that, but we'll thunder against everything else. None of them would ever step foot in a bar, but by golly, if you drink, not just get drunk, but if you drink, you're awful, and you're wicked, and God's mad at you, and all that stuff. So it's just the same kind of thing. We could use more balance in general in the church. Anyway.
Juan Venter says, how important is the authorship of the Gospels to you guys?
It's more important to me because um, I there's a part of me that someone's going to say the consensus of scholars, or the consensus of critical scholars, blah 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 blah. I operate that there's no reason why modern scholarship knows so much more about the composition and authorship of the Bible than the ancient church. So
Yeah,
you know,
I'll say what I say
so
about
it's
this.
kind of important to me. Why do we think we know better than they did?
Yeah, I mean that from 200 AD,
Yeah.
which is that's 100 and it's more than 100 years, more than 150 years after, but the we're about 150 years after, 160, 70. But they had these names attached to them,
Yeah.
and so that's important to note. But here's the thing.
I mean, I'm happy to note that they're all formally anonymous, but that's not an argument in favor of not having traditional authorship. There's both
Formally anonymous means they don't claim in
it
the
doesn't open
body
with
of
Luke,
the text.
author of.
But here's the thing about it.
gospel.
I'm a big advocate of Richard Bauckham's book on this, Jesus and the Eyewitnesses. And just for those that would like to know, if you want to know, you mentioned where the scholars land on these things. A slight majority of scholars think that someone who had access to Peter and is giving you Peter's testimony is Peter's eyewitness wrote Mark, and there's internal and external reasons to think so. Matthew, the majority of scholars do not say that Matthew wrote Matthew. Luke, a slight majority think that someone who was a traveling companion of Paul, who had access to some of the women disciples, wrote Luke, and you can get that in Craig Keener's introduction to the book of Acts, maybe. And John, a slight majority think that someone who was either giving you the eyewitness testimony of a lesser known disciple of Jesus, or a lesser known disciple of Jesus was writing it, gave us John, which is shocking because John is the one that everyone wants to throw under the bus more than anything else. So that's important. And with Matthew, go back to Matthew, Papias, writing toward the end of the 1st century and the beginning of the 2nd century, he does speak about Matthew having written something that is plausibly the book of Matthew. So some people even think that perhaps the thing that he was referring to that Matthew may have written was the Q source. But in any case, there's a great case to be made in Richard Bauckham, in his book, that what you do have here is the eyewitness testimony. It's just not necessarily the case that the writer of the book is the eyewitness, but that they're giving you what the eyewitness said. Also, I should say there is this thing about oral tradition versus oral history. There is, on the one hand, what most people talk about when they talk about people passing on a story, and it's like the telephone game. By the time you get all the way around a circle, it's a completely different story. But an oral history is a little bit different, and that is where the guarantors of this story, the tradition, are still living. So, some of these apostles are still living and going around preaching, and some of these disciples when these are written, so that if it needed to be corrected, they could correct it. I think it's relevant that Paul, and I don't mean to suck all the air out of the room just going on and on, but I think it's relevant that Paul, in 1 Corinthians 15 and in Galatians, we see him, pointing out that they didn't add anything to me, but I'm giving you what I got from them, and for example, the creed of the early church, everybody agrees was something he got.
Dovetailing the Wyatt's question there, how can we be sure of the biblical canon?
I didn't see that one. Go ahead.
How can we be sure of the biblical canon?
Well, here's how I do this.
Right. I want you to do it.
Yeah, there's a much more specific and detailed way to do this, and this is not like a slam dunk, okay? And this doesn't get you to inerrancy, but what this does give you is general reliability. So, for apologetics purposes, this is what I share if someone asks me, and we're answering questions on a stage somewhere. Okay, so the resurrection of Jesus is the historical centerpiece of the Christian faith. And what that means is, if Christ be not raised, we of all men are most miserable. In other words, Christianity is falsifiable in one sense, and in another sense, if Jesus wasn't bodily raised from the dead, Christianity is false. Okay, now, if we make a good case for the resurrection, which we've done all over this channel, I think, and we can believe that the resurrection is true, then here's what that gives you. What you can do is, sorry, John McCrae was just texting me.
Tell him to do some pull-ups. I'm still waiting on my pull-up. Everybody go to What Do You Meme's YouTube page right now and say, answer the fitness challenge.
Yeah. So
Eric did it.
What do you mean? What do you meme?
Yeah.
So if Jesus rose from the dead, and we have good reason to believe that as a historical fact, then guess what that means? That means that the biggest miracle claim in the Gospels, all of them, we have good reason to believe it. They were telling us the truth about the most outlandish thing they claimed there. And if we can trust them about that, then why would we doubt them about what we could say are lesser miracle claims, right? Yeah. Okay, so now I've got reason to believe that the Gospels are generally reliable. Well, if I can believe that the Gospels are generally reliable, including the Gospel of Luke, then that means I have good reason to trust Acts, because Luke is giving us more in the book of Acts. And so if I have good reason to believe the book of Acts, the central figure of the second half of the book of Acts is Paul. And then you're often running with most of the rest of the New Testament is either Paul or people that we've already affirmed in our, discussing this. And then if you want to quibble about somebody like Jude, okay, have at it. But that means also you've got something else here.
I found this on the web.
You've got also here that in Luke, we find out that Jesus affirms the law, the writings, and the prophets. And if you know your Old Testament, that is the totality of the Old Testament. Yeah. And so if we can trust the resurrection, we can trust the Gospels, and that's us off and running in both directions of the Old Testament and the New Testament. Is it a slam dunk? No. Does it give you inerrancy? No. But what it gives you is general reliability, I think. Yeah. So for a simple answer in a live chat like this, that's
yeah. I mean, it's not like they didn't know what they were doing when they're putting the canon together, but I affirm prima scriptura. I have no problem with the Holy Spirit's involvement in the life of the church and recognizing the canon at his direction. So,
well, I'll tell you what, we're right at 2. I know it's 2 Central's time, and I know that there are still some people rolling through, but I think we're going to go ahead and close this down. This has been a really fun one.
Not my real name.
I enjoyed this.
How do you reconcile the lack of evidence of the actual resurrection? Well, I'd reject the premise of that there's a lack of evidence of the actual, with evidence of mere belief in the resurrection, given the rampant superstition at the time. Well, at the time, the idea of a bodily physical resurrection was not even much for the Greeks anyway. The Greeks were like would have thought that that idea was a little bit nuts, right? I mean, they're coming off Phaedo. They're thinking, you know, the soul goes somewhere and does something. So yeah, I don't. It depends on the audience who had that, but I don't think that there's a lack of evidence for the actual resurrection. I think that the case for the actual resurrection of Jesus. Now, was there other superstitious beliefs? Sure. Now, if you want to get into parallelomania, I mean that's one thing, but those aren't the types of resurrections even there. You know, cycling and all that kind of thing. It's not the same thing as what Christians were talking about, anyways. It's particularly Jewish belief. Now, there was all kinds of superstitious beliefs in the ancient world, but that I don't know. I don't know how that ties into the belief of the actual physical bodily resurrection when a lot of people weren't even on about that, and that they found the idea kind of silly,
Yeah.
right? Compared to the idea of the immortal soul going off to be in some other way of existence, you know. So I don't. And as far as the evidence for the bodily resurrection of Jesus, there's no lack of evidence. There's so much evidence that everyone who disbelieves it stumps on a bad worldview presupposition to reject it instead of offering a competing hypothesis, because competing hypotheses typically get demolished under the weight of the evidence of the actual resurrection of Jesus.
And if you want more on that, Dr. Pritchett actually teaches a class on the resurrection at Trinity College of the Bible and Theological Seminary, where we both are professors. TrinitySem, that's TrinitySem.edu.
Hey, pretend you're Matt Dillahunty, and I'll be Braxton Hunter.
Okay.
So am I to understand that you're not going to give an alternative case to the resurrection of Jesus?
Correct.
Right. Why? Why is that? Yeah.
I don't know.
Right.
All right.
Because
We'll
I'd get taken apart worse than I got taken apart anyway.
You can join. Hey, join the Trinity Radio Primetime discussion group on Facebook, and then some of these questions that we didn't get to, you can ask us there, and long conversations can be had. There's a couple of questions you have to answer. Some people don't answer the question. It's just yes or no type stuff.
I agree with No Name. There is a canyon between believing in a risen Christ and an actual right, which is why we provide the evidence for the actual resurrection. Right? We're not saying that believing in it is evidence that it happened. Again, no one. And then Larry comes along with No Name and says there's a difference between believing in a resurrection and there being one. Yeah, nobody's ever.
I've never heard anyone.
Right. So again, you know, okay.
All right. Well, hey, guess what? We'll see you next time on Trinity Radio.